So what is compression? And how can you use it to benefit your audio? Well, you're about to find out. Compression is a useful tool that allows us to reduce the dynamic range of an audio signal. Simply put, this means we can make the loud parts quieter and the quiet parts louder, effectively reducing the difference between the two. Compression can be beneficial in a range of different scenarios, but ultimately is going to be your first port of call when you have a signal that needs evening out. Think of a vocal take that has some words sticking out and some buried. Compression can help here. Or perhaps you have a drum kit that needs to be thicker and more weighty. Compression can also help here. The effect compression has on your sound can be full of character or practically invisible, depending on how you set the controls of your compressor. Let's take a look at these controls now and how they can affect your audio. We're going to use Neutron Pro for this, as its graphical display allows us to visualize compression in a really intuitive way. The threshold is the level at which compression starts to take place. Anything quieter than the dB level of the threshold will remain unaffected, but anything that breaches the threshold will be compressed. How much the sound is compressed is determined by the ratio. The ratio determines how much compression occurs once the signal rises above the threshold. In a standard compressor, a ratio of 3:1 will output just 1 dB for every 3 dB that breaches the threshold. Similarly, with a ratio of 5:1, the compressor will output 1 dB for every 5 dB that passes the threshold. You can think of this as a simple division. The compressor will divide the signal that breaches the threshold by the ratio and output accordingly. The attack time of a compressor is how long it takes to reach full compression. We can see this in Neutron Pro, represented by the orange line that moves downwards as the sound breaches the threshold. How steeply this line moves down is a reflection of your attack time. A swift downward movement is representative of a fast attack, whereas a slower, more gradual downwards movement will occur with slower attack times. Slower attack times are great for when you want to maintain the transient detail of your sound, but bring down the overall level of louder sections. A faster attack time is useful when we want to bring down the level of our peaks much more quickly and create a more noticeable effect. You can think of the release time as the opposite of the attack. This is how quickly the compressor will allow the signal to return to normal after compression has taken place. This is also represented by the orange line on the display. This time you can see it after compression has taken place, making an upwards movement back towards the threshold line. The knee affects how a compressor behaves with signals that are very near the threshold. Think of it as a narrowing or widening of the threshold point, smoothing out the transition between not compressing at all below the threshold and compressing at the chosen ratio above it. For a smoother and more musical handling of compression, you can set a soft knee, where compression turns on gradually as signals approach the threshold and then pass it, whereas a hard knee setting is going to produce a more noticeable difference in tone. By design, a compressor will bring down the level of the peaks in your audio, which will result in the overall level being quieter at the output than the input. To remedy this, we use makeup gain to bring the signal back up again after compression has taken place.